Marcus Grant sat in seat 3A, business class, Patriot Airlines Flight 447. His charcoal suit was simple, no tie. A black backpack at his feet. Around him, passengers settled, laptops opening, champagne poured. He opened his laptop, reviewed quarterly reports for Grant Equity, then closed it. Leaned back. The lead flight attendant approached. Chad Jenkins, his name tag read. His eyes swept over Marcus, lingering too long. Something shifted in his expression. "Excuse me, sir. I need you to move to another seat." Marcus looked up. "I reserved this seat 3 weeks ago. We have a VIP passenger who needs it. You'll be in 5B. Marcus felt the familiar weight in his chest, the same weight he'd carried his entire life, every time someone assumed he didn't belong. "I paid for this seat. I'm not moving." Chad's jaw tightened. "Sir, I don't think you want to make this difficult." The words landed like a threat. Marcus had heard that tone before, the unspoken warning, the assumption he should comply, disappear. He pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder. Behind him, heavy footsteps. A loud voice, "Where's my seat?" Marcus knew. Everything was about to get worse. Bradley Crane entered the cabin like he owned it. 6'2", silver hair, perfectly styled, a Rolex catching the overhead lights. His navy blazer hung open over a crisp white shirt. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. His eyes landed on seat 3A. On Marcus. "That's my seat," Bradley said, pointing. Chad stepped forward quickly. "Mr. Crane, we're handling it." Marcus didn't stand. He looked at Bradley, then back at Chad. "I'm not moving." Bradley's face darkened. "Excuse me?" "I reserved this seat," Marcus said calmly. "I paid for it. It's mine." Bradley let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus met his eyes. "No. Bradley Crane. Crane Development. I spend over $300 million a year with this airline." He stepped closer. "And you're sitting in my seat." Marcus's voice didn't rise. "Then you should have reserved it." The cabin had gone quiet. Passengers were watching now, some with phones out, others leaning forward in their seats. A woman in 4C whispered to her husband. A man in 2A shook his head slowly. Chad cleared his throat. "Sir, Mr. Crane is a platinum member for 15 years. If you could just—" "I'm not moving," Marcus repeated. Bradley's jaw tightened. He glanced around the cabin as if looking for witnesses to this absurdity. "This is unbelievable. You people always—" He caught himself, but not quickly enough. Marcus felt it. The shift, the unspoken words hanging in the air. He'd felt it his whole life. At Boeing, when a supervisor assumed he was maintenance and asked him to clean up a spill, 30 minutes before Marcus was supposed to present a multi-million-dollar propulsion design. At investor meetings, when venture capitalists asked who he worked for, unable to imagine he was the founder. At restaurants, where hosts assumed he was waiting for a table, not holding a reservation. He'd learned not to react, not to give them the satisfaction. "Mr. Crane," Marcus said quietly, "I understand you're used to getting what you want, but not today." Bradley's face flushed red. He turned to Chad. "Get him out of that seat. Now." Chad hesitated. His eyes flicked between Marcus and Bradley. Then he pulled out his radio. "I'm going to need a supervisor at gate 24A. Marcus reached into his pocket, not for his wallet, not for identification, for his phone. He opened his messages and typed quickly, "Sarah, on Flight 447, SFO JFK, situation developing. Recording everything, stand by." He hit send. Sarah Williams, his general counsel at Grant Equity, would know what to do. She always did. Marcus looked out the window. The tarmac stretched out, gray and endless. He could see ground crews loading luggage, fuel trucks moving between planes. Normal. Routine. The world continuing as if nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. Chad spoke into his radio, his voice low but urgent. Passengers whispered. Bradley stood in the aisle, arms crossed, radiating fury, and Marcus sat still, waiting. The supervisor arrived within 3 minutes. A woman in her 40s, dark hair, pulled into a tight bun, navy blazer with 4 gold stripes on the sleeves. Her name tag read, M. Peterson, cabin manager. She carried a tablet and a practiced smile. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," she said smoothly. "I understand there's a seating issue?" Bradley spoke first. "This man is in my seat. I've been a platinum member for 15 years. I expect—" "Mr. Crane," Peterson interrupted gently, "I'm familiar with your account. Let me just review the reservation." She tapped on her tablet, scrolling. Her eyes moved quickly. Then she looked up at Marcus. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it to her without a word. She scanned it, compared it to her screen. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Confusion, maybe, or surprise. "Seat 3A was reserved 22 days ago," she said slowly. "Paid in full. Business class confirmed." "Then give him another seat," Bradley snapped. "5B, the exit row, it's a better seat anyway." Peterson looked at Marcus. "Sir, would you be willing to—" "No," Marcus said. The word hung in the air. Simple. Final. Peterson's smile thinned. "Sir, we're trying to find a solution that works for everyone." "I have a solution," Marcus said. "I stay in the seat I reserved and paid for." Chad stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Sir, we can offer you a voucher, $500, and complimentary upgrades on your next 3 flights." Marcus looked at him. "I don't want a voucher. I want the seat I paid for." Bradley let out a harsh laugh. "Of course you do. Probably the first time you've ever flown business class, right? First time someone offered you a voucher and you think you're making a point." Marcus's jaw tightened. Just barely. He felt heat rising in his chest, but his voice stayed level. "Mr. Crane, I've flown business class more times than I can count. That's not the issue here." "Then what is the issue?" Bradley demanded. Marcus held his gaze. "The issue is that I'm being asked to give up something I paid for because someone else wants it more, and I'm wondering if you'd be asking me to move if I didn't look the way I do." The cabin went silent. Peterson's face flushed. "Sir, that's not... This has nothing to do with..." "Then why am I the one being asked to move?" Marcus said quietly. "Why not Mr. Crane? Why not someone else?" Chad opened his mouth, then closed it. Peterson looked down at her tablet as if searching for an answer there. Bradley stepped forward. "Don't play that card. This has nothing to do with race. This is about customer loyalty. I've spent millions with this airline. What have you spent? A couple thousand?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. He glanced at his phone. Sarah had replied, "Recording everything? Good. Don't engage. Let them talk. I'm calling Richard now. Richard Donovan, CEO of Patriot Airlines, a man Marcus had met exactly 3 times, twice at board meetings, once at a charity gala. Richard didn't know Marcus well, but he knew Grant Equity. He knew the 18% stake Marcus's firm held in Patriot Airlines. And he was about to find out what was happening on Flight 447. Marcus set his phone down on the tray table, screen up. The voice recorder app was still running, the timer ticking forward. 12 minutes now. Peterson cleared her throat. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you one more time. Will you accept the alternative seating?" "No," Marcus said. "Then I'm afraid we'll have to involve airport security." Bradley smiled. "Finally, get him off the plane." Marcus leaned back in his seat. He folded his hands in his lap, and he waited. Airport security arrived in under 5 minutes. 2 officers in black uniforms, radios crackling on their hips. They moved down the aisle with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from dealing with difficult passengers every day. The older officer, A white man in his 50s with gray stubble and tired eyes approached first. "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" Peterson stepped forward. "This passenger is refusing to comply with crew instructions regarding seat reassignment." The officer looked at Marcus, then at Bradley, then back at Marcus. His eyes lingered. "Sir," he said to Marcus, "are you refusing to follow crew instructions?" "No," Marcus said calmly. "I'm refusing to give up a seat I reserved and paid for." The officer glanced at Peterson. "Is his ticket valid?" "Yes," she admitted, "but we're trying to accommodate a priority passenger." "Priority how?" the younger officer asked. He was Latino, mid-30s, and his tone suggested genuine curiosity. Bradley stepped forward. "I'm Bradley Crane, Crane Development. I've been a platinum member of this airline for 15 years. I spend over $300 million annually on corporate travel. I requested this seat, and I expect—" "But you didn't reserve it," Marcus said quietly. Bradley's face went red. "Are you seriously going to sit there and lecture me about reservations? You think because you scraped together enough miles or got some discount fare, you have the same rights as someone who actually supports this airline?" Marcus looked at him. "I think because I paid for this seat 3 weeks ago, I have the right to sit in it." "This is ridiculous," Bradley said, turning to the officers. "Just remove him. He's disrupting the flight." The older officer sighed. "Sir, if his ticket is valid—" "I don't care if his ticket is valid," Bradley's voice rose. "I'm telling you, as a paying customer, as someone who matters to this airline, I want him removed." The words landed like stones. Someone who matters. The cabin felt smaller suddenly. Marcus could feel eyes on him, some sympathetic, others not. A man in 3C muttered something under his breath. A woman 2 rows back had her phone out, recording. Another passenger, a white woman in a business suit, shook her head and looked away, as if embarrassed to be witnessing this. Chad leaned in toward the older officer, lowering his voice. "Look, we just need this resolved. The passenger is being non-compliant. We have the right to deny boarding if someone refuses crew instructions." "He's already boarded," the younger officer pointed out. "Then we have the right to remove him," Chad said firmly. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. The weight of every moment like this he'd ever experienced. Every time he'd been told, subtly or not, that he didn't belong. He thought about the first time. Age 12, walking into a department store in Detroit with his mother. A security guard had followed them through 3 aisles before his mother finally turned around and said, "We're just shopping. Is that allowed?" He thought about Boeing, his first week as a junior engineer. A senior manager had walked past his desk, seen the calculations he was working on, and said, "Whose work is that? Who are you covering for?" He thought about fundraising for grant equity, sitting across from venture capitalists who smiled politely and said, "We'd love to meet the actual founder," assuming Marcus was an assistant. Every single time, he'd stayed calm. Professional. He'd proven himself, over and over and over, and here he was again. The older officer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you willing to move to a different seat?" "No," Marcus said. "Then I'm afraid we're going to have to escort you off the aircraft." Bradley smiled. "Thank you, finally." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately. The officers tensed slightly, hands moving toward their belts. He pulled out his phone and held it up so they could see the screen. I've been recording this entire interaction," he said quietly. "Every word, every action, for the record." Peterson's face went pale. "Sir, you can't—" "I can," Marcus said, "and I have. I've also sent copies to my legal team. They're currently reviewing this for violations of contract law, consumer protection statutes, and potential civil rights violations." The older officer frowned. "Civil rights?" Marcus looked at him. I'm being asked to give up a seat I legally reserved and paid for. No one else on this flight has been asked to do the same. The only difference between me and the other passengers in this cabin is the color of my skin. So yes, civil rights. Bradley laughed. It was sharp and bitter. Oh, here we go. Play the race card. That's what you people always do when you don't get your way. You people. There it was, out in the open now. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. A few passengers gasped. The woman with the phone angled it toward Bradley. Marcus didn't react. He'd learned a long time ago that the best response to bigotry wasn't anger. It was documentation, evidence, letting people reveal themselves. He looked at Chad, at Peterson, at the officers. I'm not moving. If you want to remove me, you'll have to physically drag me off this plane. And when you do, understand that every second of it will be recorded, uploaded, and reviewed by lawyers, journalists, and federal regulators. He paused. So ask yourselves, is this really the hill you want to die on? For a seat? For him? The cabin was silent. Peterson looked at Chad. Chad looked at the officers. The officers looked at each other. And then, from the front of the cabin, a new voice. Calm, authoritative. What the hell is going on back here? Captain James Harding stood at the front of business class, arms crossed, jaw set. He was in his late 50s, white with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of stern expression that came from 30 years of flying commercial aircraft. He wore his uniform like armor, 4 gold stripes on each shoulder, wings pinned above his left breast pocket. He looked at the crowd gathered around seat 3A. Security officers, flight attendants, a furious billionaire, and a black man sitting perfectly still, hands folded in his lap. Someone want to explain this to me? James said. We're 28 minutes behind schedule. Peterson stepped forward quickly. Captain, we have a passenger refusing to comply with seat reassignment. We've attempted to resolve it, but... Who requested the reassignment? James interrupted. Mr. Crane, sir. He's a platinum member. I didn't ask about his status. I asked who requested it. Peterson hesitated. Mr. Crane requested seat 3A. The current passenger has a valid reservation, but we were attempting to accommodate... Then there's nothing to accommodate, James said flatly. If his ticket is valid, he stays. Bradley stepped forward. Captain, do you know who I am? James looked at him. Should I? Bradley Crane. Crane Development. I spend $300 million a year with this airline. I'm calling Richard Donovan the second we land. Maybe the second we don't land because apparently your crew doesn't understand how to treat priority customers. James's expression didn't change. Mr. Crane, I don't care if you spend $3 billion. If you didn't reserve the seat, it's not yours. Bradley's face darkened. This is outrageous. I've been flying Patriot for 15 years. I've never been disrespected like this. And I've been flying for 30 years, James said. I've never seen a passenger demand someone else's seat. He turned to the security officers. Are we done here? The older officer nodded slowly. If the captain says the passenger can stay, he can, James said. Bradley's voice rose. So you're just going to let him sit there, after everything I've told you? Yes, James said simply. This is discrimination, Bradley shouted. You're discriminating against me because I'm... He stopped himself, but the implication hung in the air. A passenger in 4A, a young black woman, let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Another passenger muttered, Unbelievable! Bradley spun toward them. You think this is funny? You think it's okay for airlines to treat loyal customers like garbage while people who probably can't even afford to be here get priority treatment? The young woman raised an eyebrow. Afford to be here? Really? Yeah, really, Bradley snapped. I've earned my place. What's he done? Probably used miles. Probably got some charity upgrade. And now he's sitting there acting like he's entitled to... Mr. Crane, James said sharply, that's enough. But Bradley wasn't finished. He turned back to Marcus. You're going to regret this. You think you can just waltz onto a plane and take what's mine? You think because you throw around legal threats, you're untouchable? I know people. I know lawyers. I know politicians. By the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd just moved. Marcus looked at him. His voice was quiet, steady. Are you threatening me, Mr. Crane? I'm telling you how the world works, Bradley said. People like me, we don't forget. We don't forgive. And we sure as hell don't let people like you get away with this kind of disrespect. People like you. The words echoed through the cabin. The woman with the phone was still recording. Other passengers had their phones out now, too. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Marcus felt the anger building inside him. Not the sharp, hot kind. The slow, cold kind. The kind that had accumulated over decades, over every dismissive comment, every suspicious glance, every time he'd had to prove he belonged somewhere he'd already earned the right to be. He thought about his mother. How she'd worked 2 jobs to put him through MIT. How she'd told him again and again, you have to be twice as good to get half as far. How she'd been right. He thought about his first day at Boeing, walking into the engineering bay with his MIT diploma and his job offer, only to have a supervisor hand him a mop and say, "Third floor needs cleaning." Marcus had stood there holding the mop and said, "I'm Marcus Grant. I start today in propulsion design." The supervisor had laughed. Actually laughed. "Sure you do, kid." Marcus had presented his employee badge, his offer letter, his credentials, and still, the supervisor had made him wait while he called HR to verify, as if Marcus might be lying, as if a black man couldn't possibly be a Boeing engineer. He thought about building Grant equity. Every pitch meeting where investors asked to speak to the actual founder. Every negotiation where people underestimated him until he'd already outmaneuvered them. Every boardroom where he was the only person who looked like him. He'd built a billion-dollar firm. He'd earned respect through sheer force of will and undeniable results. And here he was, being told he didn't belong in a seat he'd paid for. Marcus took a slow breath. He looked at Bradley, at Chad, at Peterson, at the security officers who'd come to remove him. "I'm not moving," he said quietly. "Not because I'm stubborn, not because I want to make a point, but because if I move now, I'm telling every black person who's ever been told they don't belong that maybe they're right. Maybe we should just accept it. Maybe we should just keep our heads down and take what we're given." He paused. "I'm not doing that. Not today." Bradley let out a harsh laugh. "Oh, so now you're a martyr? A civil rights hero? Over a seat on an airplane?" "It's never just about the seat," Marcus said. James ran a hand over his face. He looked tired. "Gentlemen, I'm going to say this one more time. Mr. Crane, if you don't have a reserved seat, you need to find another one or leave the aircraft. Sir," he nodded to Marcus, "you're staying in 3A. That's final." Bradley's eyes blazed. "I'm calling Richard Donovan right now." He pulled out his phone and dialed. Put it on speaker. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Polished, professional. "Mr. Crane, good afternoon. How can I help you?" "Linda, put me through to Richard, now." "Mr. Donovan is in a meeting, but I don't care. Tell him Bradley Crane is on the phone. Tell him there's a situation on one of his flights that he needs to handle personally. Tell him if he doesn't pick up, I'm pulling every dollar of corporate business from Patriot." There was a pause. Then, "Hold, please." The cabin waited. Passengers leaned forward. Chad and Peterson exchanged nervous glances. James stood with his arms crossed, waiting. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. "Sarah." Richard just got briefed. "He knows. Stay calm. This is about to get interesting." 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then Richard Donovan's voice came through Bradley's phone. Calm, but strained. "Bradley, what's going on?" "I'm on flight 447, San Francisco to New York. Your crew is refusing to give me the seat I requested. They're prioritizing some random passenger over me, over a platinum member. I want this resolved, now." Richard sighed. Bradley, if the passenger has a valid reservation, I don't care, Bradley shouted. I've spent millions with you. I've been loyal for 15 years, and you're telling me I don't get priority? Not over someone who reserved the seat first, no. This is insane. Who is this guy? What's his name? What's his a... James stepped forward. Mr. Donovan, this is Captain Harding. The passenger in question has a valid ticket for seat 3A, reserved 22 days ago. Mr. Crane is requesting we remove him to accommodate his preference. I've refused. Good, Richard said. You did the right thing, Captain. Bradley's face went purple. Are you kidding me? Richard, if you don't fix this... Bradley, I'm not going to fix anything. The passenger paid for his seat. He stays. Fine, Bradley spat. Then I'm done with Patriot. Done. Every contract, every corporate account gone. That's your choice, Richard said quietly. Bradley ended the call. He stood there, breathing hard, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. The entire cabin had heard. Everyone knew he'd just lost. He turned to Marcus. You're going to pay for this. Marcus didn't respond. Bradley grabbed his bag from the overhead compartment and stormed down the aisle toward the exit. As he passed, he muttered just loud enough for people to hear. Probably stole someone's credit card to buy that ticket anyway. The young black woman in 4A stood up. Excuse me? What did you just say? Bradley ignored her and kept walking. James watched him go, then turned to the security officers. Escort Mr. Crane off the aircraft, and note in the report that he made threatening statements toward another passenger. The officers followed Bradley out. The cabin slowly began to settle. Passengers returned to their seats. The murmuring died down. Chad and Peterson retreated to the galley, whispering urgently. James approached Marcus. He looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, James said quietly. Marcus nodded. Thank you, Captain. James turned to head back to the cockpit. Then he paused. For what it's worth, you handled that with more grace than most people could have. He walked away. Marcus leaned back in his seat. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. He looked out the window, watched the ground crew moving around the plane, watched the fuel truck pull away, and then he saw it. A thin, dark streak running along the underside of the wing, just below engine number 2. It was faint, but unmistakable if you knew what to look for. Hydraulic fluid. Marcus sat up straighter. He squinted, leaning toward the window. The streak was small, but growing. A slow, steady leak. His mind flashed back to Boeing, to 15 years of inspecting engines, reviewing safety reports, investigating incidents. Hydraulic leaks weren't always critical. But on takeoff, with full thrust, with system pressure at maximum, his stomach dropped. He stood up. Marcus moved toward the cockpit. A flight attendant stepped in his path. Sir, you can't... There's a hydraulic leak on engine 2, Marcus said. Get the captain, now. She hesitated, then picked up the phone. Spoke quietly. Hung up. The captain says return to your seat. Tell him Marcus Grant needs to speak to him. Former Boeing engineer. This is a safety issue. Her eyes widened at the name. She called again. 30 seconds later, James emerged. Mr. Grant, what are you... Window 3A, engine 2, hydraulic leak. I saw it 2 minutes ago. James stared at him. You're sure? 15 years at Boeing. I know what I'm looking at. James walked to 3A, leaned over, pressed his face to the window. His expression changed. Jesus! He grabbed his radio. Ground crew, visual inspection on engine 2. Possible hydraulic leak. They waited. Then, Captain, confirming hydraulic fluid leak. Seal failure. James went pale. How bad? Minor now. Could worsen under pressure. James closed his eyes. If we'd taken off... At full thrust, Marcus said quietly. That leak could have ruptured. Loss of hydraulic pressure, loss of control. James keyed his radio. Take the aircraft out of service. Full inspection. He looked at Marcus. You just saved 200 lives. Marcus shook his head. I just looked out a window. Most people wouldn't have known what they were seeing. James extended his hand. Thank you. Marcus shook it. James picked up the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've discovered a mechanical issue. For your safety, we're deplaning. We'll arrange alternate transportation. Groans filled the cabin. Marcus's phone rang. Richard Donovan. Marcus, I just heard you identified a hydraulic leak. Is that true? Yes. Jesus. Pause. Are you on flight 447? The same flight where your crew tried to remove me? Yes. Silence. Oh my God. Marcus, thank you. I don't know how to fix your airline, Marcus said. He ended the call. James stared. You just hung up on... The first officer emerged from the cockpit. Captain, I just heard... He stopped, looking at Marcus. You're Marcus Grant? Grant Equity? You own 18% of Patriot. James's face drained of color. He looked at Marcus, the simple suit, the backpack, the seat he'd almost been forced from. You're a board member. Close enough, Marcus said. The cabin went silent. Chad appeared from the galley, ashen. Peterson gripped her tablet. Marcus stood, picked up his backpack, walked to the front of the cabin. He looked at the passengers. My name is Marcus Grant. I'm CEO of Grant Equity. My firm owns 18% of Patriot Airlines. His voice was steady. Today I experienced discrimination. I was asked to give up a seat I paid for because someone wealthier, someone white, wanted it. I was threatened with removal. Told I didn't belong. The cabin was silent. But I stayed. And because I stayed, I looked out a window and saw something dangerous. Something that could have killed everyone here. He glanced at James. Your captain did his job, but your crew was willing to remove a paying passenger to appease someone they thought mattered more. He looked back at the passengers. That's not how airlines should work. Your safety, your dignity, they don't depend on money or skin color. Someone started clapping. The young black woman in 4A. Others joined. Half the cabin applauded. Marcus nodded once, walked toward the exit. As he passed Chad, he stopped. Chad was shaking, eyes wet. I'm sorry, I didn't know. You shouldn't have had to know, Marcus said quietly. You should have treated me with respect because I'm human, not because I'm powerful. He walked off the plane. Richard Donovan arrived at San Francisco International 3 hours later. He found Marcus in the executive lounge working on his laptop. Marcus, can we talk? Marcus gestured to the chair. Richard sat, looking exhausted. I've spent 3 hours on calls. The hydraulic leak you found? Mechanics confirmed it would have failed catastrophically within 10 minutes of takeoff. Full system failure at climbing altitude. You saved 247 lives. Marcus said nothing. I've reviewed all the recordings, Richard continued. Passenger footage, cabin audio, yours. I've seen everything. He paused. Chad Jenkins and Michelle Peterson are terminated. Effective immediately. Violation of anti-discrimination policy and passenger rights. And Bradley Crane? Marcus asked. Banned permanently from every Patriot flight and service. Platinum status revoked. Corporate accounts closed. He threatened to pull $300 million. We don't want his business, Richard said firmly. Not with that behavior. Marcus nodded. This is going viral. Passengers recorded everything. 48 million views, Richard confirmed. Hashtag respect in the air is trending. We're getting destroyed. We deserve it. He leaned forward. What would make this right? Marcus closed his laptop. You can't make it right. You can only do better going forward. Tell me how. Your crew saw me as a problem, as someone who didn't belong. That's culture, not training. It doesn't change by firing 2 people. Marcus paused. Mandatory bias training for every employee, quarterly reviews, independent audits, a passenger bill of rights, real diversity in hiring and leadership, and a $50 million fund for oversight, managed independently, not by your teams. Richard extended his hand. You have my word. 50 million, independent oversight, full transparency. They shook. I'm sorry, Marcus, Richard said quietly, not just as CEO, as a person. He left. Marcus sat alone, scrolling Twitter. The videos were everywhere. People were furious. The conversation had grown beyond one flight. It was about systems, power, who gets believed. His phone buzzed. His mother. I saw the video. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Just tired. I'm proud of you. Your father would be too. Marcus stared at the message. His father, a mechanic who died when Marcus was 19, had worked his whole life without getting respect. Marcus had built Grant Equity partly to honor him, and today he'd almost been thrown off a plane. But he'd stayed, spoken up, and maybe something would change. Sarah texted, FAA just announced a full investigation into Patriot's inspection protocols. You started something big. Marcus looked out at the planes taxiing, thought about passengers who trusted the systems would work, would keep them safe, would treat them fairly. Most of the time, those systems failed people who looked like him. But today, he'd made sure they didn't fail everyone else. That had to count for something. 1 week later, Marcus stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. The National Aviation Summit had invited him to speak. The room was filled with airline executives, FAA officials, advocates, and journalists. A week ago, I sat in seat 3A on a flight that never took off, Marcus began. His voice was calm. I was asked to give up that seat because someone else wanted it, someone who believed he mattered more. The room was silent. I refused. And because I refused, I was threatened, insulted, told I didn't belong. Security was called. He paused. But I stayed. And because I stayed, I looked out a window and saw a hydraulic leak that would have killed 247 people. He looked around the room. I didn't save that flight because I'm a CEO. I saved it because I was there, because I refused to be erased. Marcus let the words settle. Every person deserves dignity, deserves respect, not because of their bank account or status, but because they're human. Dignity isn't earned. It's a right we're born with. The audience was motionless. What happened to me happens every day, to people of color, to women, to anyone who doesn't fit the image of who belongs. Most don't have the resources I have. They can't fight back. They endure. His voice softened. That has to change. Not with promises, with action, with accountability, with systems that protect everyone, not just people who already have power. The room erupted in applause. People stood. Marcus nodded once and walked off stage. Backstage, a reporter approached. Mr. Grant, what do you want people to take away? Marcus thought for a moment. That change is possible, that standing up matters, that we all have responsibility to make sure systems treat people with dignity. Every single person. That's powerful. It's just the truth, Marcus said quietly. 3 months later, Patriot Airlines unveiled its passenger bill of rights. The $50 million fund was operational. Bias training was mandatory. Independent auditors began quarterly reviews. The FAA had tightened inspection protocols industry-wide. Marcus watched the press conference from his office. Richard announced the changes, flanked by civil rights leaders. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. His phone buzzed. The young woman from 4A flew Patriot yesterday. Flight attendant was respectful. No issues. It mattered. Marcus smiled. Not a small thing. That's everything. He looked out at the city, thought about passengers flying right now, just trying to get home, trying to be treated fairly. Most would never know his name. But maybe they'd benefit from what happened, from one person who refused to move. Change didn't happen in grand gestures. It happened in small moments, in choices. in people deciding they'd had enough. Marcus recorded a video, posted it to Twitter. If you see injustice, don't look away. If you experience discrimination, document it. Speak up, not because it's easy, but because silence never changed anything. Your voice matters, your dignity matters. He paused. Remember, respect isn't earned by status. It's owed to every soul, including yours. He hit post. Within an hour, 500,000 views. By the next day, 3 million. People shared their own stories, their own moments of standing up. The conversation continued. Somewhere, on a flight from Los Angeles to Atlanta, a passenger in 12F was asked to move for a priority customer. She pulled out her phone, started recording. "No, I'm staying in my seat." The flight attendant paused, looked at the phone, looked at her. "You're absolutely right. I apologize. Enjoy your flight." Small moments. That's how it starts. Will you stand still or will you stand up?